Let's see. All right, so good afternoon. My name is Heidy Canales, and I'm interviewing. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Bertha Castaneda.
And this is on December 22nd, 2021, for the Latinx Oral History Archive. So yes, thank you again for taking the time to interview with me today. I really appreciate it. And again, we're just gonna jump right in and start learning more about you and your basically your life, because this is what this is. It is kind of an overview of who you are. So can you just start off by telling me about one, who are you? Where were you born? When were you born? Tell me a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up, maybe like your family structure, just your city that you grew up in.
Awesome. Yeah. So I was born in 1994 and I was born in Washington, D.C. So my family is from El Salvador. So I am Latina, and that's like where my origin's from. But I was born in the United States, but everyone basically else was born in El Salvador. Growing up, I did grow up in a single family household. So I grew up with my mother. So I'm really, really close with my mom. And I guess, growing up in that environment, I feel like has pushed me to become like this independent, strong woman that like whatever I set my mind to, like I go for it. And I think that's just something my mom taught me as I grew up. And then something else that I feel like she instilled in me is just being involved. Like at a young age, no matter what, like she always signed me up to different programs. Like after school, you'll do this, or there's like this little study group, you're gonna do that. Girl Scouts, like that was another thing I like did as a child. But I feel like she always found opportunities for me to be involved, meet people wherever I can. And then I feel like those traits early on really did kind of follow me throughout like, my years, even till this day. But yeah, that's a little bit of my background. So born and raised in DC. Currently I do live in Philadelphia. So after I graduated from Penn State, I did get a job offer here in the Philadelphia area. So I ended up here, been here for I think like 4 or 5 years now. And then one of my goals is I would like to move to Los Angeles. So I feel like that's going to be a big move from the East Coast to the West Coast because all my family is literally in DC. All my close friendships also, I want to stay on the East Coast. So it would definitely be an interesting experience.
That's so cool. We have a lot in common also because I'm also Salvadorian. Both of my parents
Oh,
were,
nice.
and I'm also from the DMV. I grew up in PG County. So
Oh, wow. Look at that. That's awesome.
that's
Yeah.
so
I saw your number. I was like, oh, Maryland number.
yeah, wow, that's so funny. All right, so tell me about like your family structure, I guess. So you mentioned you grew up in a single parent household. Did you have any siblings? Were you surrounded by maybe your extended family at all?
Yeah, good question. So my family structure is a little complicated. So yeah, I had a mom and dad. They divorced when I was probably like 10. And on my dad's side, I actually do have siblings on that end. So I think I have six siblings. And they're all older than me. So I think growing up when my parents were together, I spent a lot of time with them, but there was this huge age gap, even to this day. Like so I'm the youngest, so the second youngest is probably like 20 years apart from me. So it's just like crazy to think, right? Yeah. So yes, when my parents divorced, I feel like the connection with my dad's side of the family kind of dissolved a little bit, unfortunately. But recently, after I graduated from Penn State, I feel like I've been able to rekindle that. So with that being said, I did have siblings and stuff, but I still consider myself an only child because I grew up in that world with just my mom. And luckily on my mom's side, she has a lot of siblings. So I have a lot of aunts and uncles. And when you think of Latino families, they're just huge. Like both of my dad and mom's side, I just have so many cousins, so many aunts and uncles. So I feel like family, we're never shorthanded with family. So on my mom's side, luckily, I was very close to two of my aunts. So I feel like that was kind of like my extended family. So it was my mom and I, but then my aunt, she had her husband and then her kids, and then my grandma. So I feel like whenever it came to holidays or events, like that's kind of like the family we always like gravitate to. Like even the holidays right now, like Christmas around the corner, like that aunt and grandma, like that's where we go to for the holidays and spend time with one another. So yeah, that's kind of like the family structure. So I feel like other aunts and uncles have been part of that, But it's just like we have so many family members, so like people come in and out, and like that's kind of how it works for us.
No, I get that for sure. So what it sounds like is like you were surrounded by a lot of women all the time. So how did that kind of play a role, like in terms of how you grew up, like, and how maybe how you treated education or how you treated like work ethic or things like that? What did that play a role in your life?
Yeah, I would definitely say, yeah, definitely a lot of women role models in my family. And I do think that played a big role in just my life and how I see things. So I guess just growing up in like a single family household with a mom, I feel like I've learned how to be very independent, very strong and independent, I think, because growing up there was like rough times that I guess my mom would go through, but like I was her rock, right? So I had to learn how to like be strong in certain situations just because who else could she lean on? And then when it comes to that independence, like, yeah, a lot of my women in the family, they do their thing, like they take no for an answer, like they have goals, they set their mind to it and they go for it. So I feel like a lot of those traits have I've been able to see and have been able to carry that on. Because yeah, when I look or when I think about my life right now, I like if people had to describe me in 3 words, like people say I'm very independent. Like I don't rely on anyone just because I guess growing up it was really just my mom and I. We had to kind of like look out for ourselves, and clearly there was family and stuff. But I think it's different when you like grow up in a 2 parent household, right? When you have a mom and dad, because I guess usually if you're a girl, you're like daddy's girl, and then your dad is always protecting you. But in my case, it wasn't like that. It was kind of like I had to fend for myself, had to be independent, had to use my voice, and kind of just get the things I needed or wanted to make sure that we can like move forward. So yeah, I would say that's kind of how that structure has like shaped me to the person I am today.
Thank you for sharing that. And then can you tell me more about maybe the different occupations that your various family members were in? So like what kinds of work did they do throughout your lifetime?
Yeah, so I would say in my family, it's a mixture. So to give you a little bit of background, like I went to Penn State and I got a double major in business management and IST, so information science and technology. And I would say in my family, no one has that. So I definitely want to say I'm kind of like the oddball in that world because a lot of my like female family members, I want to say, were either in like healthcare somehow. So like the one aunt that I'm really close to, she works like at the clinic as a manager. I'm not really sure what she does, but I guess she just kind of like manages patients, paperwork, making sure people get their services right. And then my mom actually, she is a teacher's aide, so she's always worked with kids. So education, I guess that's kind of like her thing. So I feel like those are kind of the two worlds I saw growing up was kind of like the healthcare field, also like the educational field. So me entering to like business and IST was just very far away from what anyone in my family was doing, which also had its hurdles, right? Because I had to find like other people who are in these fields to kind of get advice and tips of how to navigate this and to like be successful in these fields. But yeah, I would say those are kind of the two, I guess, like occupations that I mostly saw like family members in. And then when it came to like uncles, cousins, and stuff, a lot of them were in construction. So kind of like those typical jobs that I guess when immigrants come to the country, like take on. So I feel like that's kind of like the world I was exposed to.
And then can you tell me more about maybe like time you spent with your family? So was there any like special holidays that you always looked forward to? Now that we're in the holiday season, for instance, like are there certain things or traditions that you remember doing growing up around the holidays?
Yeah, holidays. Yeah, we love holidays. So I would say a big, like the two big family holidays, I want to say it's Christmas and like New Year's. I feel like with my family, like if you miss out that holiday, like you will hear for like days afterwards. Like people will be upset with you. They'll bring it up of like, wow, that one time you did not come. So Christmas usually what we do is usually like someone in our family hosts the party. So it's usually like a nice little dinner. Like think of Thanksgiving. So it's a nice dinner and then have different like Christmas activities. So it's like decorating cookies or gingerbread house or just playing board games, right? Then we kind of do that and then we wait until midnight and then that's when people like open presents. So that I would say like that's one of the biggest like holidays that we always come together for. And then a tradition that happens throughout my family, like on both sides, is quinceañeras. So like whenever a woman turns 15, it's kind of similar to a sweet 16. You have this big party. It's just like a big birthday party Very extravagant. You have a dress, a crown, a cake. You invite basically everyone you know to kind of celebrate this big moment in your life, which basically is like, and I guess in our tradition, it's like when you turn 15, you're changing from a girl to a woman. So like I guess that's like the whole story behind that. But yeah, I would say that's kind of like our big thing. And then usually with our family, because quinceañeras are pretty expensive, they can be kind of like a wedding a little bit. That a lot of family members do come together to kind of pitch in for whoever is like quince is coming up. So let's say it was my cousin's quince, like there's something called like godparents, I guess, for like different items. So like the cake can be really expensive. So sometimes like the parents of the girl who's turning 15 years old, they'll like look for family members who can contribute to the cost of the cake or the ring or just all these other things that factor in to planning this like big celebration within the family.
Yes, I love that. Both very, very reminiscent.
Right, quinces, because I had one and it was like so nice. So quinceañeras are always fun.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, I do. Okay, tell me about like school growing up. So elementary school, like do you remember like what you wanted to be when you like grew up at that point in life? Middle school, do you remember what kinds of things you were interested in class wise? High school, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? High school.
Right, the growing up question, huh? So I would say, so elementary, I would say at a young age, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do. I think there's probably moments that like kids have like, oh, they watch a show or something and they're like, oh, I want to be that. So I do think throughout like elementary to middle school, I think I had just random ideas of different things. Like I remember one year it was so random. I was like, I want to be a dolphin trainer. I was like, why? And then another year I was like, oh, I would love to be a vet. And then that changed. So yeah, I feel like every year there was like an idea of what I wanted to be, but there was no reasoning behind it. I think there was probably like a show or something popular out there that was like, oh, I want to be that. But I do have to say, like from elementary, like my elementary years, education, I went to public school. So my mom being a teacher A, like education was always important to her and she wanted to make sure that I had the best education possible. And usually in DC, I guess the area we were growing up in, like they didn't have the best public schools. So I think elementary school, that's when she noticed like, oh, my daughter could get a better education. So let me see how I can kind of put her into like private school. So I think around middle school, that's when she was able to find like the scholarship fund that allowed like students in need to go to these private education institutions so that way they can get the best education they can. So she enrolled me into that. And then ever since middle school to high school, I had like a private education. My family is Catholic. So I usually went to like Catholic schools. So I think middle school, I went to like a Catholic middle school. Then after that, I went to a Catholic high school. Um, and then that was kind of the rest of my education. And so especially since, education was her world, like she was like, yes, this is a priority. And she was always a believer to that after high school, like you need to go to college. Like you need to get that degree in order to like progress in this world, especially through her experience because she didn't have a college degree here in the United States. So that was kind of like her dream that she wanted to pass on to me. So yeah, middle school, high school had the education. And I feel like in high school, that's when you really start thinking of like, oh, what do I want to do with life? And like, what do I enjoy? What do I hate? And I do remember that in high school, I was really good at math. Like I was like, I want to do something with math. Didn't know what exactly. Like, it's not like I wanted to be a math teacher, but I was like, I'm good with numbers. So let's figure out like what that means. And then I think towards the last year of high school, like when you start like applying to colleges and trying to like really think, oh, what am I doing? I think I realized like I want to do something in business. I didn't know what exactly, but I was like, oh, I think I could do that. Like running a whole business and managing people. Like I think I'm pretty good at that, I would say. So that's kind of like my mindset. And then in college, took a whole different route and tried different things.
Was there kind of like because you mentioned like your mom would always say, okay, college, college, college. So one, what actually made you consider college in the end? And two, was there a like career that she kind of envisioned for you, or did you kind of have that like support, I guess I would say, in terms of the variety or whatever, like you could be whatever you want to be type thing?
Yeah, good question. So let's say with college, I feel like that was always instilled at a very young age from my mom. And then a lot of my family members around me too. She was very so like my mom didn't believe in dating, like just dating like boyfriend, girlfriend, all this other stuff. So growing up, she was just like, yeah, you better never have a boyfriend. Like you can have a boyfriend when you have a college degree. And I'm like, all right, mom. But I think education was so important to her because I guess through her experience, like migrating from El Salvador to the United States without a college degree and just like working her way up, like it was hard for her. Like I remember when I was young, she had multiple jobs. Like there was a point that she literally would work from like 8 in the morning till midnight. And I like my grandma was taking care of me. Like I had school and then my grandma and like school, grandma, and like that was it. And I barely saw my mom. So I think just her struggle, she didn't want like me to have the same struggles, especially if I have the opportunity and she can give me the best opportunity in the States. So for her, it was just like, just, get an education. And I think for me, how that, because, parents can always be like, get an education, but I do think it depends on the person too, if they want to. But for me, I think what motivated me to even get that higher education is like, I seen her struggle and yeah, it's been rough. So I don't know. I do feel like a degree does open so many doors and makes life a little bit easier that I was like, yeah, I don't want to go through those same struggles. Like she was struggling. And on top of that, I just feel like my mom worked so hard for me to even get to this point that I was like, I need to return the favor and like make her proud. So I'm always been that type of person that I'm gonna do this for us, not for me. I mean, just clearly, yeah, like get a good job for me, but it's us like thinking of our future because you took so care. You were such a great mom that I want to give back to you and let you retire, enjoy your like retirement years, so you don't have to work. Like I want to do that for her. And then I guess your other question was like college, right? Figuring out what I.
Yeah, like was there, like job pressures in terms of like what you wanted to be, like what you needed to be or something, or and then in the end, like what actually like clicked in you for college in terms of like, okay, like yes, this is something I'm gonna do, and how did you find out about Penn State kind of thing?
Yeah, so I guess what career is my mom always wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like, those typical jobs that everyone wants their kids to be. And I realized I didn't want to be a doctor because I hate blood and met like science in general, like biology, not my thing. Because in high school I had biology and I was like, this is cool, but not my thing. Like I enjoyed math so much more. And then lawyer, like legal stuff, I was like, no, I don't see myself like debating all the time. So there were just two careers I feel like I want to say pressure, but she would have love for me to do because she always like put that idea, oh, like imagine you being a doctor. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. But like that was just never in my head. And then I guess where it clicked for me to like, I want to go to college, I think it was just like early in high school. Like I think I guess and I guess I was a part of a lot of after school programs. So I usually was like the youngest in these programs. So I did see a lot of like people who are older than me, like in high school years or like finishing high school and didn't get a degree. And like there was a big difference of like some people that I saw without degrees versus with degrees. And like I said, I think a lot of it came from seeing my mom struggle versus like my aunt who got a degree and her life was like pretty nice. I was just like, wow, there is such a big difference of like that wealth of like that gap of wealth that could get built up based on an education that I was like, no, I want this and I want a better life for my mom and I. So I think it was just early high school years that I was like, I want this. And honestly, I didn't like in high school, I didn't know how I was going to go to college either. Like I was like, how do I apply? Like, how do I even get scholarships? Because I didn't have the funds for it. But luckily, my school counselor, she helped me a lot. And I guess she also saw the potential in me that she was like, no, I'm going to help you wherever you need. Like, if you don't have like because I guess when you apply to college, this was so a long time ago, but I guess there's fees you have to pay, right? Like application fees. So I remember I didn't have the funds for that. So she was like, no, like there's ways that we can get waivers. Like, let's make sure we're like applying to the top schools and things like that. So she was the one who really helped me get there. And then Penn State, how to even get in my radar because in DC, like they're not really promoted over there. I don't know how I got some mail from Penn State, but I did. And they have something called Achievers Weekend. So Achievers Weekend is basically bringing high school students to campus for a weekend, and they pair you up with a host from Penn State, like a student from Penn State, and you basically stay with them the whole weekend, and they give you that whole Penn State experience. So I did that, and honestly, my host was amazing. Like I was just like, wow, like she's such a sweetheart. She really showed me a good time. And on top of that, like I just love the campus. Like when I was on Penn State's campus, I was like, this is a school for me. And I did tours of a lot of other colleges, but like Penn State was the one. Like I was just like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this because it was out of state tuition. It was expensive for me, but I was like, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going here. And like, I don't see myself anywhere else. And like, that's how I kind of ended up at Penn State.
That's so funny because I'm also a Achievers victim.
Yeah, Achievers Weekend, Achievers program is an amazing program. It was like,
Really
it
is.
really changed
Smart
my
does
life.
their thing. Yeah. Smart definitely does their thing. And then what did it feel like, when you finally made that decision, committed to Penn State, packed up your car or however you got up here? Do you remember that feeling?
Yeah, for me, I would say I was pretty nervous because I think like my entire family's in DC. So when it came to school, like and other cousins, I guess, a lot of them stayed local or were like taking a gap year or whatever you want to call it. But for me, I was like the oddball, like the black sheep that was trying to go to a college that was like outside of like the DMV area, like the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So I feel like a lot of my family, like it was a mix. Like I think family was proud that I was going to like college, but the part of them were like, why Pennsylvania? Like just stay in DC. And it's true, DC has some amazing schools, but I feel like for me, the reason I decided to go like out the state, like the city, was because my mom was like kind of like a helicopter parent. And I just felt like I needed to grow. And I feel like college was my opportunity to grow and spread my wings and just learn mistakes on my own. Like I just feel like my mom was so sheltered. And as a high school student, which I really appreciate because high school years, puberty and all this like influence could be bad, right? But I just felt like college years was when I was like, I want to be independent and like learn things on my own. Like I don't want my mom to constantly be like, oh, let me do this for you. Like, no, like. So that was one of the main reasons I went to Penn State. But yeah, I would say family feelings are mixed. So there was like people who were supportive, others who were like, why are you leaving your mom alone? Because I was the only child. So I feel like some people try to put guilt in me. So I feel like the first couple of months, not gonna lie, at Penn State was hard because my mom actually like fell into depression because she was like missing me a lot. So a part of me in those first couple months, first adjusting as a first gen college generation student, right? Like that was already hard in itself. Like her learning how to study properly, learning how to like navigate classes, teachers, like all this life and being independent on top of that, but also just like the family pressures of like, oh, your mom is going through this because you're in school and far away. And I know that took some time to kind of like overcome because I know it wasn't me. It's just like that's how life happens sometimes. But that was a lot for me to like handle my first semester. That I actually debated like, do I just like transfer to a school near to my mom? But luckily she got better and she just got used to it. It's just a big change for her. But yeah, I would say it was definitely rough my first semester just because of all like life factors, navigating school, financially too. Like, how do I pay for things and just be a student, but also like buy food and just the essential things that you need as a Penn State student.
No, for sure. I definitely get that. And what about like impressions wise? So, did you have any impressions about Penn State, formulated between your time from Achievers to, let's say, before you moved in? And then how did those impressions live up to how the rest of maybe your freshman year played out and then the rest of your Penn State experience?
So when it comes to expectations, I would say Achievers Weekend for me was amazing. So I definitely have to say my first impression of Penn State was like spot on. Like I was so excited to have visited the campus and just the people I met. It's kind of crazy. At Achievers Weekend, I actually met my best friends. Like there is people I connected with and we're still best friends to this day. And it's just crazy to think that that weekend was like, wow, like really built those friendships. But yeah, so that weekend I think I connected with some people, exchanged numbers, because social media wasn't really a thing back then. So it was literally like phone numbers, texting. And there was like these two girls that I don't know, we just like hit her off the bat. And after Achievers Weekend, we did text about like offers, like did we get into Penn State? Is it Maine? Like where are you living on campus? Are you accepting? So I think the build up to going to Penn State was just so much more exciting because I already had like unexpected friends that I made before even going to school. So I think that it changed the experience so much more because I think it was just by myself. Because from my high school, I was the only one going to Penn State, like that I was like close to just by myself. So I think that whole like being able to share that experience with someone who's as excited as you, like just made such a big difference. So when I actually arrive on campus, it can be scary your first day, your parents leave, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is a whole new world. But for me, since I already had these established friendships, like these two girls, like the moment my parents left, I like texted them and I'm like, hey guys, let's hang out. Let's go like eat. Let's go explore. So I feel like a lot of people didn't have that. Like the first week is like, ooh, who do I talk to? How do I make friends? But I think that really just set my Penn State experience. Like the first day I already had my friends, and since it was already a group of us, like we would just make new friends along the way. Like and more out there, more outgoing. So it was just like very easy transition, I would say, when it comes to like that friend and social aspect. And also since Smart is the one who hosts Achievers Weekend, I feel like what that helped a lot because I knew there was a community of people of color that I can like gravitate to. Because clearly Penn State is a PWI, right? That like when it comes to Latino population, Black population is very small. Like when you look at the numbers, but I didn't feel that. I feel like my first year because Smart already like tapped into me that I already knew where they were, where they existed, and I knew they could give me resources to other organizations. So I didn't feel like I was like the only Latino on campus because I already had the exposure to Smart, and Smart exposed me to so many other things. So I was very fortunate that I had that exposure early on because I have met other Latinas, for example, in like IST, like senior year, and they were like, "You're like the first Latina I meet," and I'm like, "Girl, where have you been for the last 4 years?" Like, there's a whole Latino Caucus, and under Latino Caucus, there's so many organizations. Like, there's the PRCC. Like, what do you mean I'm the first Latina? Like, there's so many of us, even though relatively to the Penn State population, we're small, but like, no, like we're there. So I was very lucky to have had the exposure, to have met people from all types of communities because of Achievers Weekend. And then that just opened so many doors, so many other things. So my impressions of Penn State was amazing, hands down. Even my first year was amazing just because I had that exposure. But I do think if I didn't realize, like if I didn't have that community of Smart or just like Latinos, Blacks, like I think my Penn State experience would have been very different. But I think that really changed and shaped my whole like 4 years at Penn State.
I definitely agree. Like there is power in Smart. Like they have an immense amount of power in terms of like kind of shaping your entire Penn State experience. Because I say the same thing all the time. Like not just because of like achievers, but just in terms of like having met people before actually coming to Penn State. Like that makes such a huge difference. And like it's really amazing because I'm also really good friends with one of the people that I met on Achievers Weekend. Like that's like one of my best friends now still. So that's like really crazy.
No, yeah, Smart is doing its thing with that because I agree. Like, because it is scary when you go to a place that you don't know anyone, and it's like, and it, honestly, when you're your parents or family, it's just like, what do I do now? Like, do I just go to get food and make friends? Like, it's like, how do you go about that? But like, Achievers makes that a little bit easier, you know?
Oh, for sure. So I feel like this next question is kind of like more diving deeper into, maybe your involvement within the Latino community. Like, did you feel like you had that support system within the Latino community though?
Yes, I would definitely say I had that support. And like I said, I think I just was very lucky to get exposure to the different organizations that Penn State had for people of color. So I don't even know how I found out about Latino Caucus, but I did my first semester. Like, and maybe in the first couple weeks, like I don't even know how. Maybe the career fair, not the career, the involvement fair. Maybe that's where I saw them, and I was like, oh, Latinos, and I was super excited about it. But yeah, I honestly was involved with Latino Caucus from the very beginning. So once I found out about them, my first semester, I got involved however I could. And then I definitely have to say the president at the time, I think it was Ariel, and that's someone who I'll connect you with, but she was a president at a time. And I just feel like she was so welcoming that that's why I was like, oh, I want to be a part of this like Latino family. So then that's where I started becoming involved. And then ever since that like first semester, I was involved in all aspects of Penn State. Definitely more in like the community of color, like those organizations. So after the first semester, I was involved in Latino Caucus. So I was basically involved, I think, all my time at Penn State. So in the beginning, I think I was like a committee member for Noche Latina, which is like a pageant they have. So I think I did that for a year or so. And then after that, I actually became the Noche Latina chair. So actually like leading the pageant. And then after I actually became a Noche Latina participant. And then after that, I think I ended up being the Latino Caucus, like not secretary, treasurer, I believe. So I was very involved with them. And then I feel like Latino Caucus exposed me to other worlds, right? So, and also Smart, like was Masa. Like I was just like a member. I will attend meetings wherever I could. Like all these other organizations, I would just be a member just to support. But I would say I was actively, heavily involved into the Latino Caucus. And then from there, as I started narrowing down like my career path and stuff, I started becoming more involved with like career oriented like organizations, but also always a part of Latino Caucus somehow.
Right. Yeah. That I definitely get that. And also like, do you think that they helped keep you grounded in terms of like maybe like, with your culture, considering state college in general? Like, how did you kind of stay grounded to your roots? What kinds of things did you find around town, or did you have things around town that, you kind of gravitated towards or gave you a little bit of taste of home, for instance?
Yeah, I would say for Latino Caucus, I do think, yeah, it definitely kept me grounded and kind of kept me in touch with my Latino roots because I do feel like at Penn State, since it's like a PWI, you could lose that, right? Like, especially if you're not exposed to that on the frequent, like constant basis, right? Because you assimilate to the culture of where you're at. So let's say in classes and stuff, it's mostly like white peers, like you start kind of assimilating to that. And I don't say forgetting where you come from, but you kind of start losing the pieces. So I feel like Latino Caucus just reminded me of just like all the cultural things that I love about being a Latina, right? So like, all the big holidays, like I know Masa, they always celebrated the Day of the Dead. So they always had like a little mini celebration and come to their meeting. So I will always go to that. Latino Caucus, they always celebrated like Hispanic Heritage Month. So it was just like bring all the orgs together to do different events, have different speakers come in to kind of, you know, talk about those things. And then another organization that was like kind of part of for a little bit was Alpha. So it's the Association of Latinos and Accounting and Finance. And that was another organization like which is business, so like helping you navigate being a business person as a Latina in corporate America. So I do feel like Latino Caucus did keep me grounded, kept me tied to my roots, and reminded me of all the special holidays throughout like the year, right? Like Hispanic Heritage Month, Easter, like with mass and things like that, Day of the Dead, quinceañera. Sometimes I would try to like mix that in there too, so it was just very nice. It was like a little touch from home, I would say. And I did become really close with a lot of people in Latino Caucus. So it was my family away from home.
And then what about like around town? So like in State College, was there things that you liked about it, hated about it? Kind of tell me your experience just living in State College, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, State College, I would say, as we all know, it's like in the middle of nowhere. So I remember like driving into Penn State, I was like, wow, like this is really in the middle of nowhere. Like, what's like this is about to be boring. At least that was my initial thoughts. But I just feel like Penn State is so large. It's kind of like a mini city. So even though we're in the middle of nowhere, I kind of like the way it's structured because I feel like when you think of State College, it's mostly students. So I feel like students are the ones taking over everything, which is great. But it doesn't feel, excuse me, like a small town. Um, yeah, I would say State College. I didn't mind it. I actually like the setup because now that I live in Philadelphia, right, like all these universities are in the city. And I feel like I wouldn't have liked that because when you think of college kids, right, like you're young, you're exploring yourself. There's many times that I was at the library very late at night and I had to walk to my dorm. And I feel like I felt pretty safe walking home. Like I feel like here in the city in Philly, I would not like I would not walk at 2 a.m. on Temple's University campus. I would not do that. So I just feel like having that small town vibe, I really enjoy that because I felt safer. And I just feel like even though it's just Penn State students there, like we really made it like our own little city somehow. So I enjoyed it. And then when it just comes to like aspects of downtown, honestly, I didn't even enjoy downtown until I was like older, until like I was like 21, just because like I didn't have the funds to try all these restaurants or go shopping. So yes, I would walk around, but it's not like I would enjoy the environment. I'm like, oh, let me go shopping at these stores. Like these boutiques are really expensive for a college kid. And then like they had cool restaurants and I did enjoy them when I was older and had a little bit more money. But I was just like, I don't got the funds to like go eat out off campus. Like I got my meal card. Like that's all I can afford. So I feel like my life was really on campus, honestly.
And then do you remember like kind of what like your easiest class was back then, or maybe like the hardest class that you had?
Easiest class. Wow. I feel like this is a random class, but it was like an arts class. photography 100. I feel like that was my easiest class. And it was just, and I liked the class a lot because I love taking pictures. So they basically taught you how to use a DSLR camera, and all the like effects and things you can do on it. And I remember it was a night class, so that was the only rough part. It was like from 6 to 9, like once a week. But it was so easy. Like you literally took pictures. She teach you how to use some certain like a certain setting on the camera. You do the assignment, and that was it. So I feel like that was the easiest class, and I enjoyed it a lot. Hardest class, since I was in IST, so information science technology college, there's like you can get very technical in that career, but for me I was more on the non-technical side. So there was like a coding class to learn how to do Python, and maybe Java, I think. Those were my worst class. Like I am not a coder, so I just remember I was always struggling when there was an assignment of like, okay, and it was a cool class. Like it was a video. So basically the class was, we're teaching you how to code to build a video game, which was like pretty cool, but it's just very complicated too. So in the video game, there was like a fox and a sheep, and you had to be a character. So for me, I think I was the sheep. So the goal is to make the sheep run away from the wolf. But like when you think of coding terms, like you have to make the sheep aware of where the fox is located, and then you got to tell the sheep where to go, right? To stay away from the fox so it doesn't get eaten. So that was just really hard for me. Like I struggled so much in that class. It was fun, but at the same time, like my coding, my sheep always die. Like it's just it just never survived. And then each class or each couple weeks, it got harder because there was different levels to the video game. So the first one was just like, can your sheep know where the fox is, right? So you got to write some code for that. Then the following week was like, okay, can you make your sheep aware of the walls in the way? Because it could crash into a wall and then die. So like, can it navigate around a wall? And I was like, I don't know. So it was just that was like my toughest class. I'm just not a coder, still not a coder to this day. I'd rather have engineers or tech people do that for me. I'm not doing it. I can translate it, but I'm not the one behind the scenes coding and writing things out.
Right. I mean, imagine, because someone had to code the video game to be able to tell the video game to ask you to recode it. So
right. And all the things we use in life too, it's coding, programming in the background. Like, no, I'm not doing that.
no, literally. So what about like any job experiences? So you said, you had a little bit more money going up. Did you have any jobs throughout college, maybe either during the semester or summertime? And were they more like student jobs where, you're working like maybe at the Commons, or did you have any experiences like with internships and finding internships?
Yeah, so I did work majority of my time at Penn State actually. So the only semester I didn't work was my first semester, just because I wanted to adjust to college life, like how to study properly, like how to navigate classes, teachers, all of that. But yeah, ever since then, I did work my whole like 4 years there. And it was a mixture. So my first job was at the Commons. I remember in East, there was something called, I don't think it exists anymore, but there was Big O, which was just like the pizza shop. So I actually worked there as like a cashier. And then in the Commons, like you just didn't work at one restaurant, you had to rotate. So then there's like the buffet restaurant, right? So I worked up there too. So I did a rotation of that. But honestly, I think after a couple of weeks, I hated it. I was just like, this is not what I want to do. So then, and I just feel like work hours were very weird. Like it was just not flexible where I needed them to be. And I was like, I'm not doing this. So then I quit that. But then I knew, because I came from a low income family and college was already expensive, that I was figuring out every semester how I was going to pay for it. That I was like, I need to work and just like be able to afford certain things, right? So then I don't even know how I found this opportunity, but I got lucky and got work study. And there's this program that allowed you to work at a daycare. So that's what I did my entire time at Penn State. So after the Commons, because I love kids, and there's a daycare on Pollock. So that's where I ended up working. So after I did like all my background checks and things like that, I got the like offer, and then every semester I would work there. And then since I worked there so many times, like they already knew who I was, so it was just very easy to get my foot in the door every year. And like I did great work there too. And I love that job because it was very flexible. They only work Monday through Friday from like 8 to 5, so it's not like I'm gonna work a Sunday night shift or something weird like that. And then they work towards your schedule, so I could set my times, my dates, and teachers were amazing. So that was kind of like my job throughout the whole college experience.
Oh, that's love. That's really good. That's really good. And then how about like for fun? So you had Saturday and Sunday off, what kinds of things were you doing for fun?
Yeah, so weekends, because yeah, I was very involved at Penn State. So sometimes the weekend was just like catching up on things, like it was either schoolwork, different organizations I was involved with, but I did also have fun. So like honestly on the weekends was just hanging out with friends. Like I was a big volleyball player. Like I love volleyball. So I remember being in East as a freshman. We like the volleyball court was right in front of my dorm. So I literally would just peep my head out. And if I saw people on the field, I would just go out and just join them. So I feel like weekends was just like catching up with friends and just exploring Penn State, I guess, even though I guess you can see everything in a couple months, right? But like, I don't know, just like also Penn State as a school just always had events, right? Like on a weekend, there might be a concert or at the hub, there's like some arts and crafts stuff. So it was just like trying to explore all these like different cool things. And then also all the organizations that have like events sometimes too. So going out and supporting those as well. But yeah, definitely weekends was a time to unwind, hang out with friends, and just see what State College slash Penn State had to offer.
And bringing both the academic, the professional, the social, all those experiences together, do you have any like special memories that you always kind of think back to, like, oh, that was a great day, or that was a great semester? Like, is there a memory that kind of sticks out to you?
Yeah, definitely. I would say my last semester at Penn State. So I think the last semester was just so meaningful because it was just like the ending of such a great era. Like I love Penn State. Like I truly enjoy my Penn State experience. Like if I could go back, I would be a student all over again. Like it was the best time of my life. I mean, because everyone has different experience, and I think it's just like I was surrounded with like the right people, joined the organizations that I love, adored, and things like that. But my last semester, I would say, was just the highlight of things because of multiple things. So that last semester actually was on homecoming court. So that was just something unexpected that I was not like, I didn't think that was never in my cards. Like when I went to Penn State, I never thought, oh, I'm gonna try to be on homecoming court. Like it just kind of happened. And like that whole experience, like during that week of like homecoming week was just amazing. Like I met so many people, like you're a mini celebrity like that week at Penn State. So it was just like crazy. So it was just very unreal for me, but just an amazing experience. And on top of just like homecoming stuff, like that last semester was like when I was going to graduate. So I needed a job. And luckily for me, I was able to get a job. I got a job offer right away. So literally like my last 2 months at Penn State was just like cruising because at that point I had great grades. I had a job set at the table. I know I was graduating. Ended all off with the homecoming stuff and just enjoying my last 2 months of just being a student and just like enjoying being at Penn State. So I just feel like in the grand scheme of things, it was like, wow, I worked so hard for this moment. I can't believe I'm here and like everything's looking amazing and I just can't wait to graduate and life is going to be great. So I think that was just like my best semester at Penn State.
No, yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to next semester. One more.
Right, you're almost there.
And then lastly, kind of just thinking back and looking, you did say that you were a little bit far removed, but maybe things haven't really changed. But what do you think Penn State could have done better to support Latino students? And what do you think it could do now? And if you've like heard of anything, that isn't in place yet, or things that you still think could be beneficial to help Latino students here on campus?
So yeah, definitely I would say Penn State still has a long way to go. Like I don't want to say they're like perfect when it comes to, increasing the numbers within the Latino community. There's so many things that they could do to make sure that first Latinos just feel welcome at Penn State, right? Because yeah, I've been far removed, but I feel like I do keep up with some organizations and I just see some of like, some of the racist things that happens on campus. So just making sure that Latino students or people of color in general, right, feel welcome and safe on campus, right? Like I feel like that's the number one priority. And then the second thing, also retaining people of color, Latinos, because there was a saying that my freshman year, I think at the commencement, I forgot who the speaker was, but they said, look to your left, look to your right. 1 out of 4 of you will still be here. And that was like so shocking at the time. I was like, wait, what? Like, are you saying like one of us is going to be here and everyone else is going to be gone? And I didn't want to believe it. But throughout the years, and not gonna lie, like where I was sitting, I guess was a lot of people of color, that it was just like, wow, like this can't be true. But then throughout the years, like sophomore, junior year, a lot of people started just dropping, and for many reasons, right? Like maybe they weren't prepared academically for Penn State or financially. Like that's usually a big reason why people just leave Penn State. So I just think retention is another big component of Penn State. And I didn't realize this until my junior year, but Penn State has so many resources when it comes to financially, academically, to make sure that students don't drop out. Because there was this program, I don't know if it exists now, but it was an amazing program. It was called like SSP or something like that. And basically it stood for like Student Support Services Center or something like that, or program. And they basically had counselors more than just like your career counselor, right? But like, or what is it, academic counselor. But these counselors were more focused on like, what are you struggling with and how can we help you? Like, you're saying you're struggling financially. Okay, like what can we do to like talk to your college to find financial aid or somewhere else? So I feel like programs like that need to be advertised a little bit more, or maybe even more funding, so that way students know about these resources. Because for me, like I said, I don't know, I was lucky that I was able to like find these, but a lot of people don't even know about them, right? So just giving that exposure to students to make sure that they can come to Penn State, stay at Penn State, and graduate from Penn State, because a lot of them don't, which is really sad. So I think it's just providing, making sure people feel safe, or like Latinos feel safe, create an environment for Latinos to kind of, because people do get homesick too. So like building that family away from home, I think is so important in any college environment. And then retaining those students to make sure they're successful and have all the resources they need in order to walk down that stage and get their degree and graduate.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you again for taking the time to interview today. That was my last question. But do you have any, closing remarks that you just kind of want to leave here for future listeners about maybe you, or just, some advice?
Yeah, I think I will leave people with just advice on just like, Penn State or just college experience or just life. I would say that a lot of times there's a lot of pressure of just like figuring everything in college, but I do feel like college is like an opening door to so much more. And clearly, yes, get your degree, get whatever degree you get in, but I feel like you don't need to know all the answers at that point in college. Like, I think what matters is graduate, and then from there, like life. There's so much life in front of us, that there's so much to explore out there, that you don't have to have all the answers just yet. And I do want to say, now that I'm in my like late 20s, your interests change throughout time too. So I feel like when you're a college student, you might think, oh, I want to be a vet, right? And then you get your degree and stuff. And then maybe, who knows, in your early 30s, you're like, wow, like I love animals, but now I want to probably do something else. And like, that's completely fine. I feel like life is an adventure, and there's always this pressure of like figure everything out in college. Like, we still have so much time in front of us. So I feel like that's just my biggest like tip or advice to listeners, college students. Like, it's okay to not have all the answers. We'll figure it out. Life is beautiful, and things will just work out the way they need to.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right, let's see. Stop recording.